It would not have been possible to produce all of the sessions and content for Punchback Print and bring you all of this content for free without the help of our amazing sponsors. So without further ado, here is a quick word from one of them.
In 2020, inkjet print is a £64 billion market, covering 923 billion prints. Growth will continue as high-performance technology comes to market, with printers converters spending £3.1 billion on new inkjet equipment, up from £2.3 billion in 2015. So print continues to have a place in the market mix because it works. Motivation from direct mail is consistently 20% higher than digitals. This climbs even higher when the print appeals to more senses beyond touch. And when asked to cite a brand from an advertisement, recall from focus groups is 70% higher when exposed to a direct mail piece.
Everybody, and nice to see you all on our session. Thank you for joining us. The reason for this session was to talk about why we came together as a group, our Hero Initiative, what we're trying to achieve and why we're doing it, because we believe what we're doing is incredibly relevant for the industry. It wasn't just a group of people coming together because they wanted to hear the sound of their own voices. This was about doing something that we believe is important. We feel it's essential that we change the way the industry talks about itself and is therefore perceived by its customers. But I don't want to lead this conversation because I've got some great people on board with me, and I'd like to introduce you to them all individually. So we have Matthew Faulkner from Canon, we have Paul Franklin from Konica Minolta, we have Maureen from Duplo, we have Alice from Fuji, we have the lovely Bettine from Picon, and we have Lewis from Vivid Lamination and Mike from Latcham. So I've got a great set of panelists with me and people who really understand the industry. And what was exciting for me was that when we very first launched this idea, how many people just said, that's a great idea. And it became much bigger than I expected it to, and it took on a life of its own. So I'm going to hand over now to Matthew from Canon. We came together at the end of last summer, and I remember talking to you about this and about why you might want to get involved in something like this. And it didn't seem very long from our initial conversation before suddenly we were in a meeting with Peter Docker and forming the group. And I'd just like to hear from your perspective, Matthew, why you thought it was important that we came together and where you see the group going. So perhaps you'd like to give me your comments.
Yes, thank you, Marion, and hello everybody, and welcome. I think the start point for me, Marion, to answering some of those questions comes from initially a personal perspective. And I've worked in print in my whole career, starting in manufacturing before moving over into the technology side of the business. And I think it's a fantastic industry, and I personally never get tired of seeing print happening. Going through a creative process, through those different stages of manufacturing, just seeing the final physical piece. And I think, I see an industry full of very, passionate and skilled and enthusiastic people, but also, the output of print itself is an amazing communicator. It can create things of great beauty, it's tactile, and because of that, it touches the senses. And I think, especially relevant now in our video conference world and lives, it can cut through that digital noise. But these are of course all the things that we all know. People in print know this kind of value, and I think what I see is a great belief in the power of print. But like any industry, and this is definitely not only about the print industry, is it can be rather inward facing. So you hear phrases like, we're great at talking to ourselves. And so I think as an industry, how do you communicate that energy and the potential and the value to those who have a vested interest, those print buyers, the creatives, the marketeers? And that seems to always have been the age-old problem that's been viewed as needing to be overcome in order for print to continue to succeed. But I think also you have to have, as an industry, the right ecosystem. And I kind of hesitate to use that phrase because it makes me sound terribly corporate and fluffy. But I think what I mean is an industry that has, you know, the right direction of travel, the right talent, the right ambitions, and the right technologies and services for it to provide to its customer base. And when I think about a manufacturing sector, I think I'm not alone in thinking this, but in the UK, we do seem to accept the demise of manufacturing generally because, you know, it's lower cost offshore or for outsourcing to other territories. When we kind of console ourselves that, but at least we're creative, at least we're innovative, at least we've got our scientific hubs, but, you know, jobs and financial output come from manufacturing. And I also, you know, in the European role, I can see or look at, you know, the German economy and look at what they've weathered in just our, you know, short generation, you know, reunification, propping up the euro multiple times, you know, because if you think back before Brexit, there was the whole Grexit kind of problem, the 2008 crash that we all went through, and then, you know, this economy, you know, bounces back. So there must be a contribution to that from, you know, manufacturing and export. So to me, what that proves is manufacturing has great relevance and it can be successfully done in what you might think is, you know, an expensive economy. And I remember, you know, when you and I first talked, Marion, it was about the competitiveness in the print industry, both between the printers themselves, but also between, you know, the manufacturers and the vendors. And that there's a natural race to the bottom on price that creates. And I remember we also discussed, you know, the opposite of pursuing that ever decreasing slice of the pie is how do we make the pie, you know, bigger for everyone to get a share of. And that to me was really the essence of what made getting this group together really interesting. And it wasn't about solving all the problems, but at least maybe to be a kind of catalyst for some change. And what was been, you know, really instantly recognizable from the first, you know, couple of times that we got together was a real sense, you know, this collective sense of doing whatever it takes to make really practical steps. And I really have to stress about that practicality because I don't think this is about, you know, grand ideas that are nice but are forever perhaps, you know, theoretical. To me, it's been incredibly refreshing to see a very single-minded goal around that practicality of doing something for good. But yeah, the group is very broad. You know, we've got creatives, we've got marketeers, we've got printers and technology vendors. And yeah, you also see, you know, everybody putting aside any kind of self-interest and any sense of competitiveness and putting it aside for this bigger cause. And I think if I take one example from at least my part of the industry, you know, Paul Franklin is with us and on the call today from Konica Minolta, you know, myself from Canon Europe as part of the group, and Kevin O'Donnell from Xerox. And I think that example, you know, we all compete day to day and we each look at our market share figures every quarter and work about how we can grow them across different parts of our business. But equally as vendors, you know, servicing an industry, we've all got good technologies, we've all got loyal customers, and we've all got strong propositions that we can continue to develop and grow those. But I think also we should feel obliged and willing to do something that really contributes to the long-term future of the sector. And I think back to that, you know, you mentioned about changing the rhetoric, and I think we've, you know, mentioned these kind of well understood challenges around, you know, how do we communicate about print together. But I think many individual voices agreeing about a problem, you know, pretty often doesn't help solve it. But I think working together as an industry, there has to be a much better chance. And I think, you know, just lastly on this point, you could well think, well, you know, that's all well and good, but what are the reasons to believe change can come from this type of group? But I think if you want proof of what can be done, I would look quite close to home actually in terms of the impact the IPIA has been able to had recently with government policy. And I don't know if it's tens of thousands or maybe even hundreds of thousands of businesses across actually all sectors in the UK, not just print, have benefited from the flexible furloughing scheme. And that's directly because of the lobbying of the IPIA. And to me, that's incalculable impact on the UK economy. So I think it's one small example to me of, with the right will, you know, change can certainly happen.
I think that's a really good point, because for me, one of the delights about all of this has been how people have come together and put their competitive differences aside. And actually the government side of it, you're right. You know, we were one of a number of voices from other industries, but joining together and really lobbying has made a difference. You know, we all the trade associations got behind it. And I think it is right that when we work together, we are much more effective. Just quickly though, we had 2 amazing sessions with Peter Docker. And I'm just going to share my screen very briefly now, if I can do this, because here's my technology going absolutely badly wrong. But if we look at the sessions with Peter Docker, they were quite extraordinary. Why do you think those sessions were so important to us as a group and so important, therefore, for the industry?
Yeah, I think that there was an immediate kind of gelling just because we're all in the same sector, and from the initial chats we had, we all recognise, you know, some of the same challenges. But I think what Peter did was really to help us to step back and take a different view. And I think whilst there are always hot trends to me that are talked about around business strategy at any given moment, you know, over any number of years. And I think, you know, and examples are recently it's been recognised that it's very important for businesses to understand their true purpose. And when that's understood, it then enables you to plan, you know, strategy and the actions that you take to serve that purpose. We've also in the last few years heard a lot about, you know, Simon Sinek and the Golden Circle, which to me has always been really a reflection on the way a business communicates, you know, starting with why you do what you do, and then how you do it, and lastly what you do, which we know is typically the opposite of how most businesses tend to communicate. We tend to talk about, you know, what we do and how we do it, and then kind of stop there. But I also think, you know, you hear of other trends around, you know, trust-based leadership, especially at the moment. So as leaders in businesses, how do you, you know, remove obstacles from your team and then trust them to get on and to perform it and do the job? But the exercise that Peter took us through during a couple of these meetings was, I think, really perfect in bringing this type of group with the ambitions that we have and the cross-section of skills. And it's not about listing your challenges and then thinking about how to overcome them. Certainly in my perception going in, I could have thought that's how we'd kind of approach it. So it wasn't about how do we communicate to brands better. It wasn't about how do we bring in new talent into the industry, or how do we keep, you know, an efficient manufacturing economy. So the Just Cause exercise that we went through with Peter was about first painting a picture of a future that you want to be a part of. So again, thinking selflessly, you know, thinking very long-term and sustainably. And I think especially now we'd all recognize that sustainable long-term view as being something, you know, we would all definitely aspire to. And once you've been through that exercise to learn, you know, what's important to you for this long-term future, understanding, you know, why it matters and what the future looks like, that gives you your just cause. And then you can work backwards from there. And again, back to those practical and actionable steps that take you piece by piece towards that long-term future and that long-term view. And I think, again, I go back to, you know, the work of the IPIA did to support businesses. And if we don't believe that change is possible now, because thinking about some of these concepts can seem really big and, you know, giant leaps ahead. But if we don't believe it's possible now, then I don't think we ever will. And I think this group first met, so the first couple of times prior to any thought or impact of COVID-19. But I think the need and the potential to improve is only greater now than it's ever been. So we're just at the start of this process. But to me, it shows, you know, it's huge promise. But I think really importantly, back to the practicalities, this is something that we want, you know, the whole industry to buy into and everybody to be able to get behind some of these initiatives. Does that answer your questions, Marion?
Yes, it does. I just wanted to touch on the why as well, because I think the why was important to us, because what we're not trying to do is change our heritage. You know, we have a fantastic heritage, but it is about shaping a different future for ourselves. So and thanks, Matthew. It's a great overview. I think, again, continuing with this non-compete conversation, I'd like to bring Paul in. Have you got anything to add to what Matthew's just said about the group and how it came together?
So, good afternoon, everybody, from Connacht Manota. So Dovetailing straight into the competitive conversation there, Matthew, you know, what's really great about the team, or the team that are sat around this 12-inch screen or 16-inch screen today, is that there is the competition. We clearly have a route to market that's different across, but the reality is that without us protecting our legacy and our heritage, there will be no market. You know, we are like-minded professional individuals that do carry a huge amount of knowledge and skill in diverse applications and products, etc. But bringing it together, there needed to be a common purpose. And what I liked about working with Peter Docker was he was able to bring all that influence with his skill in the room and brought it back as a community to benefit print. And, you know, and what we lose sight of sometimes is that within the print industry, over years and years, we've always tried to bring a community spirit together, but actually the reality is it will go into different verticals and people will have driving factors behind it. If you look at the people on the call today, you'll see that those driving factors is one common purpose, and that's about our legacy. So absolutely, you know, I can't echo enough the sentiments that you raised earlier, Matthew, because we are in troubled times. We are in a world now that is completely different, and a lot of it is alien to where we've been before. But the reality is, you know, if we get ourselves together as a community and try and work through these issues and problems and share best practice, for example, I think it'd be a lot easier for everybody involved.
Thanks, Paul. I want to move on from the sort of theory that, and all of us who got involved with Peter Docker came out of those sessions absolutely buzzing with ideas and thoughts, and it was amazing. But I want to just come to something that I know is very dear to your heart, and it's about attracting young people and talent into the industry. And very briefly, how this collective voice, how can we use it to attract more young people?
So, you know, I will take you back to 30 years of working in the print industry from my early days on the shop floor. I've always found print an attractive industry, only in so much as I think that people don't realise the diversity that's actually got within it. If you think about from a talent perspective, you know, where can you find designers, IT, creative, accountancy, marketing, sales, and CEOs in businesses? It's a difficult place to work in, that's for sure. But there's such a diverse range of roles and profiles that you can look at in this world. You know, it wasn't one thing that attracted me, but the creative side of it was what certainly brought me to the print industry, that's for sure. So I think certainly in where we are as well with COVID, you know, the job market is quite busy, shall we say, for obvious reasons. And I think the opportunity is now, because we have to find a way to attract people into this industry to keep it sustainable moving forward. We've always found that difficult. You know, most print industry experts will say that the commercial print market have found it quite challenging to market their own benefit, you know, how they portray themselves as an organisation. But I think right now there's a window of opportunity where potentially we can look at how we do attract that back into our industry. So,
and I'd like to pick you up on that point, because and you and I have discussed this, as the whole group has done. You know, I think I said to someone the other day that I've never spoken to my neighbours before in the village, not properly, not more than to say hello. And suddenly we're having conversations across the fence because, you know, we're all at home. And they asked me where I worked, and I said, "Oh, print industry." And they went, "Oh, that's a boring, dying place, isn't it?" And that's my point. I think that we can have lots of attractive opportunities in the industry, but unless we make it look attractive, people, you know, if the son of that neighbour is leaving school and about to go off and find a career, I don't think his parents will push him towards the print industry because they don't realise how much diverse opportunity there is. So I think one of the things we've talked about is about how the Heroes Group can help get that message out by attending conferences, writing in magazines and newspapers. And I think that's the bit that you're referring to that's so hard, Paul, isn't it?
yeah, so we need to be relevant to our audience. If you look at some of the things that happened through COVID, you see communities that now have stickers on the windows, have labels on the windows. Some of the senior generation are finding it difficult to move with technology. But going back to a print application and making it relevant, print has a unique way of cutting through most messaging. You know, email content, etc. Is it still relevant? You know, do people read it as much as they do? I don't know. You know, but print itself has a unique messaging, and I think that we, as an industry, we probably need to embellish that even further. And now, again, going back to the COVID conversation, we've got an opportunity to make that relevant to people. It's, I believe, opportunistic, and then I work with a sales environment, so I'm always opportunistic. So I think we need to reinvent the wheel, that's for sure.
Thanks, Paul. And thank you for that. I think it's so important that everywhere we can and however we can, that we really try and show the industry in a very good light to make it look as attractive as we possibly can to get young people involved. I'd just like to move forward now into another of our group, Mike Hughes from Latcham. You and I have talked a lot about this, and you again one of the first people I reached out to when I thought about the group. So I wonder if you could just talk to us about how you feel the group is going to benefit one area that I know you're really passionate about. We have a huge, fantastic environmental track record, but it's not always reflected to our customers. And I just wanted to pass it to you, Mike. How do you think why do you think it's important that our voice in the environmental arena changes, and what can the group do to help that?
Yeah, thanks, Mary. I think the print industry can often be quite defensive, if you like, or react quite defensively to things that are going on. And I know a lot of organisations would cite their change from print to digital as being an environmentally driven change. I suspect that's not always the case. I think it's probably more to do with marketing budgets, etc., than that. But I think the print industry needs to be positive about this. There's a huge amount that's been done by the industry, and obviously during the COVID crisis, if you like, the environmental agenda is very close on behind solving COVID at the end of the day. So the government's very clearly keen to invest in initiatives to drive on good environmental agenda, and I think print actually has, as I said, a lot of positive to say about that, whether that's the way that we've looked at sustainability, sustainable sourcing of materials, whether that's the way that we've been able to reduce the use of things like single-use plastics, harmful materials, or whether that's the way that we can use more sophisticated on-demand prints to drive more relevant messaging and targeting as part of what we do. So there's a lot of very positive things that we can be doing, or are doing, and have been doing. And I think it's just important through the Heroes Group and the IPIA to take the stand, if you like, and to shout about it. Yeah.
Thanks, Mike. I think one of the issues that we have to face is that we're very defensive about what we do. And I think sometimes that comes across with clients not looking at us and making the right decisions about their marketing. How do you start a conversation with a client where you begin to talk to them about their environmental footprint as well as the job?
Well, I mean, we with all of our clients would, be really taking a very proactive step to talk to them about their environmental agenda. And, we see ourselves as an important part in the supply chain to help them to reduce their carbon footprint or to help them towards their goals. So, for instance, we would be talking to them now about the use of moving from toner to inkjet, for instance. That might be very important in terms of the way that we can help with that, or, as I said, reducing the use of plastic. We do a lot of work in the membership sector, so replacing membership cards with biodegradable alternatives, which I know one of my customers has in a plant pot to see how quickly it'll degrade on their windowsill. I said it's really for us as an industry to take it to our customers and be engaging with them. Not all things can be done in digital. You can't send a COVID kit out on an email. It has to go out in print and has to be serviced in that way. And we're part of a landscape in which digital is very much there. It's there, and people should be using it, but they should be using it as part of a full media landscape that very much still includes print.
And I know that we spoke earlier in the week about the story about Argos dropping their catalogue production. And some of that is around about where they're producing and about travelling stuff all around the world in order to try and get a cheap price. And that's a huge issue, I think, as well, that we need to overcome.
I think it is, but I think actually, if you look at the way things are happening in the industry, I think we're moving away from kind of very high volume, that type of very high volume, very high page count, towards much more, as I said, regular customer communications on demand, much more highly targeted in any event. So, you know, you wouldn't have the time to produce that type of material in the Middle East, for instance, and ship it back into the UK. That has to be done, and has to be very responsive if you're going to deliver engaging messaging to your customers.
I agree. I think it's a big challenge to make sure we're in that environmental conversation, but I think it's one that the group has some practical steps that we're going to try and make in order to get our voice heard. And I think that's the great thing about this group. And in the last meetings, we obviously talked about the practical steps we can take, and picking off individual topics like environment, like young people and education, it is really important. Maureen, I'd like to come to you. I know that Duplo have always been incredibly aware of their environmental footprint, but do you think the message has got through to the people at the end of that chain, like our customers? Do you think that message of all that we're doing is actually being articulated well enough by the industry?
I think we have not been as good as we could to tell the right story to the right people. I think fundamentally, we are very good at talking about some of the most amazing initiatives taking place in the print industry, but we have those conversations within the print industry. So there are some great initiatives made, taken by some of the print providers or print manufacturers. And that's all very, very good. And there's also a huge amount of initiatives taking care to educate the public as to, you know, print is not the villain here. But unless we articulate and educate and talk to brands and marketeers and help them understand that print well done is not only incredibly powerful, it's an amazing platform to engage their audiences, to provide a unique customer experience, but print well done is also a beautiful platform to broadcast their environmental ethos. So we have made some noise, but more from a defensive perspective, and that's exactly what Mike was saying. We have been protecting and trying to defending the fact that we actually plant more trees than we destroy, but we have not necessarily helped creatives, marketers, brands understand how they can harness the power of print and use it well to do good. And you know, from my perspective, this is certainly where printers do need to do more than say, or kind of make their claim as to how sustainable they are or environmentally friendly they are. And that is great, and that's all very, very positive, and we're all moving in the right direction. But it really is about engaging with their local agencies and marketing organizations and associations and take them through that journey and help working together. And Mike, again, you touched upon that, is working with brands to help them understand how print can create a unique brand experience that allows them to really showcase the best of their brand, but to do so sustainably. And for me, this is what the Heroes Initiative allows us to do, is to have that very strong voice outside our own industry and really start that journey of saying how amazing print is and how you can use it to broadcast your environmental ethos.
And you know, you and I have talked many times about this positive voice. How hard is it to persuade your team in Japan that this is an important point? Not that they are not doing the right things themselves, but how hard is it to persuade them that we need to reach out beyond the industry to tell that story?
So Duplo Corporation in Japan actually has always taken their responsibility towards manufacturing sustainably seriously. It's something that transcends the entire organization from top to bottom. So all the sites that we have are ISO 14001 accredited, and we do take a lot of steps to try to limit, reduce our environmental impact as much as we can. And that transcends throughout the whole organization. So, you know, Duplo International or international headquarters or European headquarters in the UK, in Weybridge, or international showroom in Weybridge, everything has been done to echo that, that belief that we need to do well, but we need to do good. So the building we're in was commissioned to be energy sufficient. We have solar panels, we have wind catchers, we have light tunnels, so we bring natural daylight, you know, to the heart of the building. There is no AC unit. We have our solar kind of panels to generate all our equipment in our showroom. We do consider that we have a strong, we're in a unique position where we can really reduce our environmental impact. But it's not just doing that, it's also recycling as much as can be, from packaging to office waste, and it's also giving back. And from our perspective, you know, we have bat boxes on our rooftops. We are now looking at installing beehives. It's doing what we can do to protect, you know, endangered species and help us use our power to do good. And that is something that is transparent throughout everything that we do. And we've not been very good necessarily at telling that story. And again, I think that's where, you know, a group like Heroes can absolutely help us make a broader audience, make kind of the marketers, the creatives, the brands understand that we take a huge amount of steps to do business and to protect our environment and be as sustainable as can be.
Thanks, Maureen. I think it's very difficult though, because there's not many OEMs and industry players that would think to put necessarily a budget aside to have that conversation, because it's a huge conversation to have. And for me, that's where the group coming together like this in a non-competitive way, where we've got lots and lots of people involved that can shout that message, gives us, it's what Matthew said at the beginning, that group coming together has a bigger voice than just one company talking about what it does. So that's, you know, again, one of the big reasons we came together. And there are so many areas that I think that we need to touch on in this conversation. And I just want to backtrack a little bit. We've had a couple of comments online that I just want to cover now. We've got a comment here that somebody says our industry has the ability to change the lives of clients and their clients through the creative impact of really understanding what they need. Young people become excited when they appreciate just how much change they can affect. And I think that's really important. I think that's a huge thing. And I'd just like to bring in Bettine for a very quick comment, because obviously we're going to talk to you later on, Bettine. But why did you get involved in the group? And I know that, again, these young people in the industry is something you're really keen on.
Thank you, Marion, and good afternoon, everybody. I think as PICON is a representative body for suppliers and manufacturers to the print industry, it's important that we're open to new ideas and initiatives, and any collaboration adds strength. And I really like the idea, as has been mentioned, of the various different types of the sector coming together, manufacturers, printers, agencies. And I think, as we all know, the industry itself is very diverse. And as a result of that, I think the Heroes Group replicates this. I think we've been talking for a long time about the negativity of that's surrounding print, and I just felt when I met everybody, I obviously had talked to Marion and knew about it, missed a couple of the first meetings for a variety of reasons, but once I started to talk to everybody, I realized that, you know, this was a group who was determined to do something, enthusiastic, thinking in different ways, and a sense of determination to make a difference. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted PyCon to get involved. I think also when you were just talking about young talent, we definitely have to try harder to attract them into the industry and to change the perceptions that people have. And that was one of the projects that was discussed at the first meeting I went to, and it really hit home, because education and training is really important to PyCon. And I think we have to encourage young talent. In fact, it's crucial that we encourage young talent into the industry if the industry is going to continue to thrive. You know, as everybody knows, we are technically advanced, we're an innovative industry, but we need to get that positive message out.
Thanks, Bettine. I'm going to come back to talk to you later a little bit about some of the other topics we're working on. A nice comment here from Mark Stevenson that says, Maureen is absolutely right. We defend too much when it comes to the environment, and we try and distract by blaming digital channels for creating CO2. It's time to shout about the value. And I think that's absolutely right. We're good at being defensive, but we need to think more positively about the proactive approach we can take. I want to just move on now to something that may not initially appear to be directly related to the print industry, but I want to pass Alice from Fuji. Again, another early person to join our hero movement. Alice, you're a great advocate for all things merging with digital and, you know, working together with all the channels you've got. But you and I have talked a little bit about a couple of topics that I know are dear to your heart. I want to ask you specifically how COVID has changed some of the conversations you're having with your print companies, as well as the way that I think people are using sectors of print.
Absolutely. Afternoon, everybody. Okay, how COVID has changed things. How long have we got? I think that definitely at Fujifilm, we've seen a massive shift in what our priorities are. And I can't think of a single industry or company that won't have been affected in a similar way, which directly impacts the messaging, and any plans we might have all had for this year, I'm sure, have pretty much gone out the window and we've had to go back to the drawing board, which I think there's a massive opportunity in that. Again, I'm a salesperson, so I see the opportunity in everything. But I think that before, where our focus in business was on product and service and, you know, financial values and benefits, the shift that we've seen because of COVID has been more around offering security and stability and conveying messages of trust and reassurance to customers. I think that sort of engagement with customers' emotions is much more important, but equally far more difficult to do right and to do in a timely manner. If you take, for example, the Prime Minister himself, you know, if you think of the online and digital resources he has and he uses, the benefit of that is it can go out to mass people instantly, can be seen all over the world. The downside is that it can easily be diluted through other messages and get lost in the sea of the internet. And so he made the decision to send a printed letter through the letterbox, you know, of every household in the UK. And I think that was a massive signal of the importance of print. And that only happened because of COVID. So again, that's a great example of the importance of print, particularly this year. I think that it's heightened the difference between digital and physical, but the benefits of having both, you know. I think print has been raised as that trusted platform. You know, you wouldn't sit and have had the letter on your laptop sat on the kitchen table open on that browser page for days, moving it around each time you need to put a plate down. But with the letter, I'm sure we all did that to a degree. You know, you keep letters, particularly ones like that, they mean so much more. You read them more frequently, you discuss them with family and friends. It has much more of a emotional connection, which I think is what a lot of companies need for their customers and the end users at the moment. If you think about hospitality sectors that have begun to be moving again the last couple of months, we've all been hearing this 2-meter rule, but what does that mean when you're stood in a queue? You know, everyone has their own perceptions of what 2 meters is, but they've printed signage so that they've put those boundaries in place. We then trust that customer, we trust that company to look after us on their premises. I think that's where digital and print are perfect partnership, even more so in this pandemic. and we need to make sure that our brands and our relationship with our customers are trusted and reliable when the new normal sits in. I think that's how I'm viewing it at the moment, Marion.
Wherever it fits in. One of the things that I thought was interesting from the sessions, and one of the things that I know you got involved with, was the idea of pushing our message out by speaking at conferences and events outside of the print industry. And you'd work with Peter Docker to start looking at speaking roles, talking about the impact of print on mental health. Could you just give us a very quick overview of how you felt about that and why you think that approach was important?
Yes, absolutely. And it's quite funny actually, because I started looking at this last year, as you say, with the fantastic Peter Docker. If anyone doesn't know who he is, find out who he is. He's fab. We all love him. And it was particularly looking at mental health and the benefits of print in that world. And one thing that became apparent is that us as an industry are very, very good at talking to ourselves. That's our comfort zone. We love talking techie, we love talking product, we love learning about all of the wonderful things that we can do and we know we can do. And we might occasionally talk about, you know, speaking to brands or speaking to marketeers, but I don't believe I've ever come across a situation where we've said, you know, let's stand up at a NHS conference and speak to doctors and consultants about their clients and their, you know, patients. Don't think that's ever cropped up, when actually, particularly with print, I mean, I'm the opposite to Matthew, who said earlier, you know, been in the industry forever. I'm one of these newbies. It's been just over 3 years, which in this world is no time. And I've got the benefit of being that person who only thought of print as the Argos catalogue. I certainly didn't appreciate how much is printed. On my first day, my boss Andy Kent, who most people in the industry know, he said, you know, look around this room and tell me something that hasn't got print on it. Everything you look at has print on, and it's seeing it from that angle rather than thinking of it as the dusty old book that sits and no one reads. You know, it's so important that we change people's perception of the value of print in their day-to-day lives, not just in a company's marketing campaign. So that was one of my missions, was to think about it from a mental health point of view, which again, that's been heightened because of COVID. Mental health is so much more important now, with people's home lives and work lives being blurred and personal circumstances becoming far more important in work life than they ever have been before. I think that this is a great opportunity for us to again push the positive narrative of the part print can play and has already played. And that's something that I think the Heroes Group are really keen on doing, is sharing that narrative outside of the current industry. We all know how great it is. We all love it. There's some fantastic characters in the industry who shout about it from the rooftops to the industry. Now we need to make sure that we're creating the right environment and putting people on platforms where they can speak about it to people that don't know about it, you know, and don't understand the benefits. And one example that I often think about is, you know, if you go to the doctors and they give you some tablets or prescribe you some medicine, they don't then say, yeah, if you just go home and Google it, they'll tell you what to do. You know, they don't. That's not fitting with the instructions they're giving you. You know, if someone wants to convey trust and reassurance and, you know, take something really seriously and for it to have an emotional impact on you, print is still the way to go for that. And when you sit home and you've got your tablets with your name on, your address on, the printed information inside, which you can find online, but you need to sit there and you need to digest it in a much more tangible way. And I think that there's been so many studies of where there's a benefit to that, not only for, you know, adult mental health, but for children's development and literacy. Online can only go so far, and I think online is fantastic for connecting people and for mass information and easy access to things. But when it comes to actually truly absorbing some information, having an emotional reactive connection to some sort of, whether it's a brand or some, you know, information such as mental health leaflets and things, that's got to be done via print for it to truly land the way that the person who wrote it intended it to. So yeah, that was one of our challenges. Who can we get in front of, and how can we talk about print in a positive way? And again, it touches on what Mike and Maureen were saying about this negative we're always seen to be defensive because people are so good to say, don't do print, it's old. You know, Marion, your neighbours, print's old. Who does that anymore? We're always going, no, it's not. We need to be saying, we need to be the person coming to the table, saying why it's great, rather than saying, no, it's not bad, which, you know, again, the psychology around no, it's not bad is all a negative in the sentence. We need to be more positive and far more proactive in how we talk about it and who we talk about it to. And one of the things I also wanted to touch on was, Mark Stevenson spoke about it in his talk earlier, was about the companies that we at Fujifilm see sort of adapting to change is through the stamina. You know, you need to have that stamina to see a challenge and see change and accept it and keep going. And if you think about all the companies that have suddenly completely changed plans this year and they're now making face masks and hand sanitizing units and scrubs, all, you know, I bet if you spoke to them this time last year and said next year you'll be making face masks, they'd have thought, what are you talking about? What's a face mask? It's a Halloween. You know, it wasn't even on anybody's radar. So we need to, again, have that stamina to see the change that we want for our industry. If we want to be a positive voice, if we want to talk to people that don't have a positive view on print, we need to have the stamina to force that, you know, because the other voices are doing a good job of poo-pooing us. So we need to make sure that we have the stamina to get in front of the right people, keep the momentum going, making sure that it lands. And this year, I think is going to be a great almost case study, if you like, of how print can have such a benefit to people, not just to companies, not just to corporate, you know, separate beings, to actual people's lives, those that are isolated, those that are vulnerable, those that need true connection. Yes, they've got online, which has great aspects, as we all are now. You know, I'm sat, as you can see, in my bedroom. This is my chest of drawers. Online is fab. But if I want to connect with someone on a one-to-one, truly emotional level, we've got to do it via print. And as you can tell, I'm quite passionate about it. I get all arm wavy. So yeah, so that's why I'm excited about the Heroes Project, why Fujifilm want to be a part of it, and why I think that speaking to people way outside of our industry is the way to go.
Thanks, Alice, that's great. And I know how passionate you've been about the project, so thank you. I want to move on now and talk to the one panelist we haven't heard from yet, who is Lewis. Lewis, and you got involved in this idea of speaking outside the industry as well, just on and when I very first spoke to you, I remember you were very keen to get involved. I think we'd just done Epic and we just finished Epic, and then we were chatting about how that was such a positive voice for the industry. And then, you know, you took the conversation on from there. Do you want to just touch us on why you came on board?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me okay? Great. Yeah, so we came on board for similar to listening to some of the other team speaking from the first meeting, which was so positive. And during that time, I'd not long previously been to another meeting in the industry, and I felt quite down after the meeting because it was quite a negative meeting about the industry as a whole, and I didn't share the same view particularly. So soon after, we had the conversations with yourself and the great idea that we all put together, and we had the first meeting, and Peter Docker joined us, and I left feeling completely opposite, refreshed, and similar feelings to what's already been spoken about. And listening to what you said about your neighbour a few minutes ago, it just got me thinking, and why I actually wanted to be part of spreading the message outside of our industry. As we've said, we're great at talking to ourselves. I was actually at the dentist. It wasn't too distant time away, having some veneers, a little bit vain, I know. And the dentist asked me what I did for a living. Nice lady. Told her I was in the print industry, and she replied, that industry is a dying industry, isn't it? What do you do in there? And I was a little bit annoyed, and I sat back and thought about it afterwards when I'd got home, that the perception the dentist had over our print industry. She actually, when I left with her business card, an offer she had on printed of teeth whitening kit, a little package I had as well for looking after my teeth, printed, my receipt printed, and another item that she gave me. I left with 5 items that were all printed, and this lady thought the print industry was dying, and she'd give me an array of different products that were all printed and looked very nice. And that kind of summed up, I think, the feeling of what we all have outside of our industry, that people subconsciously know that print is important, and it's our job to make them conscious of it. And that was one of the reasons why I was so keen to get involved, and involved with speaking with Peter Docker as well. It's something that I'm quite passionate about, if I'm honest, Marion. Being a family-run business here at Vivid, I've been here sort of 17 years. It's it's something that's quite close to us all here at Vivid. So yeah.
Great. And we were talking, and we've already had one of the things we've done in during our lockdown period, because I think, like everybody, when it first hit, we were paralysed in knowing what to do and what tone of voice to take and how to react. But one of the things we started doing in the group is to push stories outside of our industry media and push them out to magazines and newspapers about, you know, good news stories. I know we've been working with you on a particular story for Catering Today, but I wanted to know how you felt about this approach, because no small cafe owner who reads Catering Today is going to buy a matrix from you. So is it an important thing that we're doing, or is it something that you see the value of, or how does that work? Because I know you've contributed heavily to that whole idea. You need to unmute, Lewis.
Yeah, can you hear me okay? Yeah, I got everything you said there, and we was very keen to get involved here as a business, and myself personally, because again, it's something outside of the industry. And one of the things that I wanted to get from it is that the Catering Today published an article on antibacterial films on products. For the menus was the actual article, but also what we're doing here is for signage as well in restaurants, cafes, and anything in the catering industry, really. Whilst we won't get any direct sales from that, it will enable the end customer to feel more comfortable in this time, for the people that are out there that are worried about what's going on in the risk categories, as they say, help them get out a bit more and support these businesses. And we're contributing to that by these new products that we're bringing out. What that also entails is that it feeds back to the owners of the restaurants, cafes, anybody in the catering industry. They will all have a printer that they go to, or a selection of, to have their printing done. Either wide format products for signage around their business, or, as I said before, some antibacterial film now to go on to the menus. So they will then feed back to the printers in our industry requesting these products, which will help generate business for them. And in turn, excuse the pun, goes all the way up and along the food chain and goes to the suppliers then, similar to what we are. And we then get sales in the long run and help the industry as a whole. So everybody benefits in the long run. So it's something that, no, you don't profit from immediately and straight away from a selfish point of view, but it is something from an unselfish point of view during these times. It helps people get out and about just a little bit more and have a little bit more confidence in going into places and feeling comfortable. And, you know, we felt that we could help towards that. We're also working on a few more products for this sort of thing as well. But yeah, we was keen to do it for Catering Today because of the timing as well now, with the government offers on 50% off and what have you, if you like, for the restaurants and cafes. So it's just another little thing that helps people come back and get them going in and keeping these businesses going. So it was quite important for us, and the print industry, as I've already explained, does benefit from that, because they will then purchase these products from the printers that they use, which hopefully will be our members.
Thanks, Les. I think it's something that, again, if we can all collectively do this and actually work together to create a voice in different publications, it'll have a massive impact. And again, as we've discussed, the difficulty is actually allocating resources and effort and time, which is what, again, we can do as a group, I think.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk now and bring us to Bettine at PyCon. I know that when I ran the idea past you, Bettine, you were really keen to get involved, but I've had a few people ask me why I'd invite another association into this group. But to me, it was always about an industry-wide group, not just about an IPAA initiative. And I think we both agree very strongly about that.
Absolutely, Marion. Yes, it definitely is industry wide, and I think more associations should get behind the message. I mean, in order for us to change the rhetoric, this can't be done in isolation, and I think everyone will benefit if everybody gets involved. I think the industry has so much to offer, and the world needs to be told. Basically, Marion, that's it. But I do hope that more associations will join. Just to, as I said, just spread the word.
I think that's right. I know that one of the areas, and again, we're just talking about the more specific things that we're doing, one of the areas that you were very keen to get involved in was the research. And I think at the first or second meeting you attended, we had a fantastic presentation about the idea of doing some slightly different research that might be of real value to the industry. Do you want to just touch on why you felt that was important?
Definitely. I thought that presentation about the research was really interesting, and I think the conversations about why is there so much negativity about print, it's been mentioned I think by every speaker this afternoon, and the sort of defensiveness that we have. So as far as I could see that, I thought research was key if we're going to change people's perception about paper and print. And it's more than just encouraging print buyers and brands to include more print in their marketing campaigns, for example. We have to understand, I think, why to most people we're an invisible industry. I mean, Lewis was mentioning about his dentist, and all the printed material that is around us. And we need to know kind of where that negativity is coming from. Those email footers that say, don't print this email. And, we all know about the banks and utility companies who declare that we're saving a tree by not having paper statements. And though there has been some research, I mean, in a survey last year, I think by Two Sides, they found out that 10% of Europeans believe that forests so rather only 10% of Europeans believe that forests were growing, whereas in fact they've grown by, I think it's about 44,000 square kilometres in the last 10 years. But you don't need me to tell you that, because I'm preaching to the converted here. We all know that paper and board is a renewable and sustainable product, but why isn't that positivity out there? This is why I think that the research is so vital, to really get down to the finer detail about what current perceptions are, and then to devise a strategy to change these. We can't develop a solution if we don't actually know what the actual problem is. Now, in preparation for today, out of interest, I Googled, why is paper good? And then I Googled, why is paper bad? And in the 0.48 seconds or whatever it is that Google comes up with all its listings, interestingly enough, Google listed 44% more entries under why is paper good? So why isn't that message getting out? We need to get some insight into what the public think. And it's not just the public, it's government and other organisations as well. It's been mentioned already, we're perceived as being a dying industry. And as far as the government's concerned, we're what they call an orphan industry, which means we straddle various governmental departments because we don't belong to any of their major sectors like automotive or aerospace, because we cross so many sectors. There's creative, there's engineering, there's manufacturing, all of which have been mentioned today. And you look at the statistics of how much we bring to the economy, £742 million to the positive trade balance in 2018. We're the world's 5th largest producer of printed products, but somehow that's just not getting through. So I think this research will allow us to get some better information. And I think, as has been touched on earlier, and I mentioned it as well, young talent in the industry, and what do young people think of print? Do they think it's exciting and innovative? Probably not. So what are people's perceptions? And I think we need to ask the right questions, because correct questions will bring us the answers that we need. And as I said, we all know what a great industry this is. And as has already been mentioned, we're very good at talking to ourselves. Mike and Marin have talked about how paper and board is a great environmental story, but we have to get the word out. And I think we have to think of different ways of doing this. So as far as I'm concerned, I think research will help us define our objectives. It will help us understand the opportunities and threats so that we can get the message out there. I think also it will help us understand who is influencing this negativity, and then it will give us a chance to see where our voice could be best used to counter these misconceptions. And I think if the last 4 or 5 months have taught us anything, it's how quickly behaviours can change. And that's what we want to do. We have to be clear, assertive and confident instead of just always being on the defensive. So that's why I think, Marion, this research that the Heroes Project is going to undertake is so important.
I couldn't agree with you more, because I think that we've never really, the negative messages out there, where are people getting the information from? What makes them believe that print is environmentally so bad? What makes people think that? We're running out of time now, and we've had some fantastic chat comments that I'd like to come to, so we'll probably put them up online later. But I just wanted to come back down the group and just ask you all very quickly, because we're now running over time, give me a very quick last thought on this as we go back down the line. So I'll start with going backwards. Lewis, have you got anything else you'd like to just quickly add? Are you there, Lewis?
I'm
no,
there.
Can
you hear me?
Yeah,
just very quickly, just following on from what the team was saying then about getting people, as I say, more conscious about what print actually means to them, because they do kind of know it. In the outside of our industry, is that I had a lady trying to contact me for some business during the last couple of months on email, and then she actually sent me something directly on a direct mail, all nicely done out, and that actually was the one thing that made me sit up and realise and got at the business, and we've actually done some business from that, whereas the emails wasn't doing it for her, whereas once she done this, and that kind of sums up what everybody is unconscious about, and we've got to try and wake them up to print.
Thanks, Lewis. And going back down, Alice, have you got anything you'd like to just finally add, or have we covered it all?
Just one. There's always something I want to say, you know that. Just a couple of things in that we need. What I think would be good is if people, not just us in Heroes, but people took it upon themselves to really be proactively positive about print, so everyone they know. So not just say I'll work in print and let that slide and let people have their own opinions of it. Really advocate it and change their thoughts about it, like mine were changed. And also, if they hear of any events online, I guess at the moment, that are coming up where they think print isn't going to be talked about, and it would be good to let us know, and just by passing that over to us, we can then sort it out amongst ourselves as a group to carry that torch. But I think if the wider industry can help us find these moments where we can really raise print up, that would be a big help. And that's all from me.
Oh, thanks, Alice. And Maureen, can I come back to you now, and just any final thoughts from you?
I mean, from my perspective, I think the pandemic that we're all facing, all the kind of implications, actually is a perfect illustration of how resilient, adaptable, versatile our industry is. And if anything, whilst it is challenging for everyone, it gives us a great opportunity as well to push our message out. Now is a time where print can really make a difference and be seen as making a difference. And we have to use that opportunity to propel our message outside our own industry. So it's challenging time ahead, but I think it's also a lot of amazing opportunities that we really, really have to harness and make use of.
Thanks, Maureen. And Mike Latcham, Mr. Mike?
Yeah, I think what is really important is that we can translate the benefit of what we do into our customers' sectors, into what they into their world. So we can talk about why is it a benefit to them? And also, I think in the context of a world where we have lots of media, and print is enormously positive, but it's obviously not the only thing out there, and it all has to work together. And I think that's our challenge, and that's why I was so interested in Heroes, as the name suggests, is to take that challenge on, and if you like, not really to talk to ourselves, but to go out there and spread the word and talk about great case studies, and great things that are going on, that you know, where print, if you like, is reinventing itself from, I mean, the obvious one is from mass emails, which are now becoming a, you know, rather over used, if you like, and where print can start to find its mix. I mean, it's interesting, a lot of the work we're starting to do on the marketing services side are for digital brands. So, you know, using print to drive customers back onto their websites. And that's the way we need to think about it.
Thanks, Mike. Paul Franklin, can I just go back to you for a final comment?
Listen, we're not Cape Crusaders on this call today. You know, we are heroes, but we are a common cause. I think the point we're trying to make today is that this may be an hour session, but I think the industry needs to have that good feel vibe come back. Feedback's a gift, so more than welcome to take the conversation offline as long as it takes, because we're here in it together. Thanks, Paul. Matthew?
Yeah, thanks, Marion. Yes, a really good chat today, I think. But, you know, a lot of topics covered around, you know, the sustainability and the way print touches lives, and some great positives and the opportunities, but also a mention of a lot of the proactive things we can do. But actually, Paul triggered me in his chat earlier around, he mentioned the phrase kind of community and communities a few times. And I think if we think about how people have come together over these last months to support people, you know, personally and in business, you know, we know that communities take time to really build, and it takes a lot of effort to keep them going. So perhaps there's somewhat of a wave we can ride of that kind of goodwill and the feeling that we can try and keep that going as a printing industry community.
I think that's right. I think one of the things that's important for us as a group, and we've discussed a lot, is all these initiatives that we're doing can filter down and translate through to everybody. So, all right, we're starting to do some stuff with the national media and placing stories. There's nothing to stop a print company in a local area finding a positive story and putting it into their local newspaper. You know, we're trying to create something that the rest of the industry can work with us. So for me, it's about getting as many people involved as we can, and for everybody to individually, I think you touched on it a few times, Alice as well, everybody taking responsibility for changing the way they talk about print, rather than being just responsive and defensive, to actually get out there and not just say print's great, but show in practical ways how print has impacted. You know, go into your local care home and talk with the staff there about how print supports people with Alzheimer's. Talk to people about the reassurance print is giving in COVID. And I just want to come back to a final message from Bettine, who was our final speaker. I think, Bettine, for you and I running trade associations, it's so important that we do as much as we can to encourage our members to spread this message and to work. We kept the hero's name, not because we're individually heroes, but the message is a hero message. It's really important for, I think, for our associations to work as hard as we can to get everybody behind this type of rhetoric.
Definitely, Marion. And I think also as you know, our members do look to us to come up with ideas and to be of benefit to the whole industry. And there's no doubt about it that that the Heroes Project is something that is good for everybody. You know, the fact to put your competitiveness aside, which we know is, as running membership organisations, our members are all or on the whole are competitors. Yeah. You know, they leave that at the door when they come to meetings. And as you said, this is for the industry good.
Thanks, Bettine. So can I thank all our panellists for joining me today. I know how busy you all are, and thank you so much for your support for this initiative. Thanks again to Brendan and the rest of the team at the IPAA, and that's us finished for today. Please do reach out to us, to me or any of the panellists, to talk about what you've heard today, if there's anything you want. Thanks, everybody.